In my time learning about longboard gear, I've seen a lot of questions about risers. When do you use a riser? How big of a riser? Should I use them at all? And hopefully this video gives y'all a little bit of food for thought of how you should be trying to incorporate risers into your downhill or freeride setup. I think, just knowing myself, I'm going to be biased a little bit more towards downhill. You know, grippy wheels, fast lines, efficient skating. But I'm sure that free riders are going to find some interesting things here too. Quick interruption, because I'm trying to be a little bit better at this YouTube stuff. Wanted to say, drop a like on the video if you're enjoying, but more importantly, drop a like on the video if you got ADHD like me and you're easily distracted. Because if you jump off of this video and go to a different video, but you like this video, YouTube will show you the rest of the video later. It'll pop up in your recommendations on your homepage, something like that. This is a 10-minute video about risers. I mean, I can't blame you if you go somewhere else. So drop a like on the video. YouTube will show it to you later. You can come finish this story with me. And then also, if you like nerding out about longboard gear, if you like this kind of off the cuff, like talking about, you know, what I think about certain components of longboards, subscribe. I've got a lot more videos like this coming. This style of video has shown to be, you know, pretty popular with y'all and my friends. You've been giving me really cool feedback. I'm excited to make you more content, so subscribe and be there for it. Now, the most common ways I see people using risers are really these two ways. The first way is they are having problems with wheel bite on their board and they want the extra ride height, the extra clearance, so that they can carve deeper without getting punished. Second reason is I see a lot of risers for shock absorption. You know, the soft risers, usually it's like a low durometer, kind of like a soft rubber. You pull them off and they're flexible. And even within that, there's two splits. For some people, it's the extra damping, you know, reducing the vibration that they feel coming through their deck into their feet, or it's protective. And in my years of using risers and skateboarding, you know, I've ridden skateboards for 10 years at least. I've found that risers don't do a lot for impact protection, you know, for protecting your board. So I think that the concern for your deck, you know, taking care of it, it's valid. That's a valid concern. I understand people wanting to treat their gear well, make it last a long time. I think that's a very responsible way to skate and consume gear, but I don't think it's really helping your setup out, you know, its longevity nearly as much as you think. Now, for downhill in particular, using risers to prevent wheel bite is pretty interesting because at any meaningful speed on our boards, we're using a really small amount of our lean. You know, if you're going even 15 miles an hour through a turn, 20, you're using a very small degree, like a small percentage of the available lean of your trucks. So your wheels should be nowhere near biting, like they should be nowhere near the deck. Usually the wheel bite that people are trying to fight, or at least the wheel bite that they experience and scares them, happens at really low speed. It'll be before a session or after a session, carving, chilling out. And that's when they're gonna get bad wheel bite and not expect it. And that's when they're gonna get pretty hurt. And it's that fear of that, you know, that nasty low speed fall that makes you reconsider if you're gonna use risers or not. It makes you think, oh shit, well, I don't want that to ever happen, especially when I'm not going fast. So I'm gonna use risers to make sure I prevent that. It's not actually applicable to high speed riding. So in my downhill setups, I don't use super high turning angles like symmetrical 50-degree trucks. I don't use super soft bushings, you know, especially in cast trucks. because I want that board to perform well at speed, at what it's designed to do. So with that same mentality of, oh, I want my board to not get wheel bite, that means you want your board to perform well for very, very low speed riding. And that just is not what the board is designed to do. I think if you're using risers on your board, you should be trying to achieve a certain feeling. Different ride heights are really fun to experiment with, especially split ride heights, like using a higher back truck, especially on boards that have rocker or a symmetrical concave. Boards that have a symmetrical concave can really get an interesting feeling from having a higher rear ride height, because I don't know, it shifts the concave forward, especially if it's rockered. The middle point of the rocker, that hammock shape, it's going to be actually closer to your front foot. So your front foot's going to sit flatter. And like a slalom style tail for leverage, like on a Pantheon seat or a Tortuga, your back foot's going to be up a little higher, and you're going to get a little more leverage over your back truck. Now, there's something to be said for the vibration damping aspect of risers. So like the shock absorption, that I think it's a decent use of risers, but I do notice personally that sometimes a very soft riser can increase the chatter that I get on my board. If the base plate of the truck, is allowed to move a little independently, it could actually open up a pathway for vibrations to worsen. Now, of course, sharp impacts, like, momentary impacts, are going to feel better. Maybe it's going to smooth out vibrations as you're rolling. But I'm finding that when I slide and I have, some decently tall shock absorbing risers, I do get a lot of chatter out of that particular truck. And yeah, it comes down to the truck itself able to have extra slop, actually. A squishy riser is introducing more slop into your setup. Now, anybody who has skated, a top mount board and then gone to a flush mount board, or the other way around, a flush mounted board and then gone to a top mount board, can tell you that the ride height of your board really affects the way that your board corners and slides. I mean, the drastic example is talking about a dropped deck. So either drop through or drop down, as in, the standing platform is much lower than where the truck mounts. The lower your board, or the deeper your flush mounts, the easier to slide your board is. You'll get less leverage over your trucks, so you may find yourself using softer bushings. But the slide itself is going to be a little easier, a little more forgiving. I know that I personally like to free ride my Coltrata board, those deep flush mounts. Really love that board for fast free ride because it's very forgiving. That board rides super low, and I don't use extra risers that kind of, adulter that feeling. Now, the opposite is true. If you have a board that has a flush mount, risers could be a cool option for you in order to get that top mounted feeling, or at the very least to, split the ride height between the front and the back truck. I think flush mounts, despite taking away from the rigidity of the board, you're removing material from your board that's extra material that could be working to, prevent flex in the deck, or absorb shocks and absorb vibrations. But on the flip side, if the board is sufficiently rigid, those flush mounts give you a lot more room for experimenting with your ride height. And I think that's pretty cool. Now, if you're switching from one truck to another, you'll notice that sometimes the ride height changes as well. Ronins are notoriously very low trucks, and anybody that you see riding Ronins on a board without risers, I can detect it in videos, actually, without even seeing the truck itself. If I see somebody riding a board that I know is a top mount and see that their, Magnum wheels are riding super close to it, Diego Poncelet is a prime example of a person who looks like they don't really use risers under their Ronins. That board just sits really low, and I think that's an interesting dynamic to tune. So you could be using your risers to tune your ride height, or at the very least try to match your ride height if you're transitioning from one downhill truck to another in order to kind of eliminate variables in your testing. Now, when I typically see risers that don't belong, it's usually on a top mount board that is set up for free ride. And there's a couple arguments you can make that, you know, low speed free ride is actually more susceptible to getting wheel bite. And so that as a factor is worth tuning your setup to avoid. I think downhill skaters should own risers in the same way that they own and use bushings. You should have a lot of them. You should have different shapes, and you should be swapping them out constantly. I think having a collection of risers is really fun. It adds a lot of value to just your skate sessions. You know, if you're like me and you like trying new things on your board just about every session, a riser is a fun way to do that. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't shout out my friend's company, Patrick. Pat's Risers is a really cool company providing a lot of different sizes, styles of riser, and other 3D printed products for downhill longboarding. He did not ask me to make this video, did not ask me to say this, but I think he's providing a really great service, and I think his products are high quality. I think he's doing a good job, and I think his company is actually adding value to the community. So check out Pat's Risers if you want to get the hookup on cheap, high quality risers. And yeah, I appreciate you all so much. I hope I see you out on the hill with some new angles or some new ride heights going on. I think it's worth experimenting with. And fuck it, try a shock riser while you're at it. Little 16th inch rubber thing. Yeah, let me know if you have a unique experience trying out risers, or, you know, mundane experience. Drop your knowledge in the comments. People are coming to this video to learn more, and I'm just one guy with one opinion. If you disagree with me and you think that you should be tuning your downhill skateboard to be avoiding wheel bite, then holla in the comments why that's so meaningful and important to you. I'm not going to hard disagree with anybody. I'm genuinely curious where other people's priorities are, because my priority is not doing that. My priority is achieving a sensation while riding. But sometimes I do get bricked at 5 miles an hour because I don't have risers on my board. So I appreciate you all so very much. Have a wonderful day.